Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's my privilege to be able to conduct our candidate forum. I'm Dr. Sherry Simpkins. I'm the Dean of General Studies here at NIC. So a few housekeeping items before we dive into our questions. Our questions were solicited from our NIC campus community, and we have 8 different questions that we'll run through with Dr. Todd Brand. And the questions are different from our opening forum to be able to give some diversity and to be able to hear more about his experiences. So a quick introduction. Dr. Todd Brand has spent over 2 decades working in the field of higher education. Originally from Mendenhall, Mississippi, Dr. Brand has spent the past 3 years serving as Chief Academic Officer at Ashland Community and Technical Colleges in Ashland, Kentucky. Prior to his service, he was a Division Chair of Fine Arts and Communication for over a decade and as an Arts and Letters Series Director. Dr. Brand has served as an assistant coach for 3 men's basketball coaches. Prior to some of his academic service, he did some stints of on-air talent for both ESPN Radio and 16 WAPT TV in Jackson, Mississippi. He taught and coached in the K through 12 system, and then he moved into the community college level. In 2010, Dr. Brand received the T.J. Harris Award at Meridian Community College for outstanding community involvement, and he was selected as Humanities Professor of the Year in 2011 by the MCC faculty. So welcome, Dr. Brand, and I'll turn it over to you to provide any opening remarks you would like for our audience here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, there we go. That's good. They just fed me really well down the hall, and so now I'm fighting sleep, that comes right after the lunch. So I'll try to keep you awake this afternoon. I told the first group that my opening statement is always that there are 3 things in life that I'm passionate about, and so that gives you kind of an introduction to who I am. And those are Broadway musicals. That's number 1. Number 2, believe it or not, I got a sports reference. It's the 221 full court press in basketball. And then number 3 is community colleges. And so I've been so fortunate in my life that if you work at a community colleges, you get the other 2. So to say I've been blessed beyond measure is quite an understatement. But I am happy to be here with you all today. I did spend most of my career in Mississippi, which is very similar to the setup in Idaho. And there's a lot of similarities between the school that I was there for 17 years, Meridian Community College in North Idaho. And it's really amazing. The more I look, the closer those 2 institutions are. Student populations were a little bit different. They were more similar when I started there. By the time I left MCC, we actually had our student demographic had changed because Mississippi, most people don't know, has the highest rate of African-American population in the country. We're right at 40%. And so our average profile of a student at MCC by the time I had left, it skewed more towards the African-American female. So that gives you a little bit about my background. We also had Meridian Naval Air Station right there in our city. So we were very much a military-friendly institute, dealt a lot with them, actually had a campus on the naval base. And then we also I noticed that the buildings all had names that were Native American names, which I think is really cool. In Mississippi and Meridian, about 30 miles away, we have a huge reservation. It's the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. And so we had a large Choctaw presence on our campus where we worked with those students as well, and did summer programs with them and all kinds of things. And so that's kind of my background and where I come from. I've been in Kentucky for the last 3 years, where I have been the Chief Academic Officer. Kentucky is totally different from anything that you will see in Idaho. We are a system of colleges that is controlled by a system office. We refer to them as the Evil Galactic Empire. And I go to CAO meetings, and the chancellor hates it when I do this, but every once in a while I'll play the imperial theme, the march, on my phone, and she'll go, "Dr. Brand, stop." And I'll go, "I can't help it." It's funny because that's how we feel sometimes, but very happy to be here, and I'm happy to entertain the questions. So, Madam Moderator, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Our first question: why are you interested in being the president of North Idaho College? What is your understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing the college?
So that's a 2-part question. I'm going to ask you what part 2 is here in a minute to refresh me. But why do I want to be president of North Idaho? Well, I've wanted to be a college president for a long time, as long as I can remember. I was a college basketball coach for a while, as she told you. And I used to be really a full-time college basketball coach. I also taught, but I was on the road a lot recruiting. And about 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday morning, I'd left Friday night. I was chasing a kid down in the bayous, the swamps of Louisiana, trying to recruit a player to the basketball team. So I got lost trying to find the school, finally found the school, watched the game, really liked him, talked to him. Then I get ready to go home and I got lost. I got lost as a goose. And so called my wife at 2 a.m. I said, I have no idea where I am and I barely have cell service. I just wanted you to know I'm alive. I've been chasing this kid. She said, we need to talk when you get back. So I said, okay. So I came back and she said, this college coaching thing's really not working out. I said, yeah, it's really not. It's a lot of hours away from you. And we had a baby at the time. And so there's about a 2-year stretch of his life I don't remember. Probably the day that clued me in the most was when she sat me down in the living room and said, here, I want to introduce you to your son. And I went, whoa, that's yikes. So I had to make a decision. And so I decided to go for a higher ed degree. So I got the doctorate in community college leadership and decided that I wanted to be a president. That's been a long time ago. So I have waited and waited a long time before applying for one of these. I don't mind telling you, I finished my doctorate in 2005. So there's the gap, 17 years. So what have you been doing for 17 years? Well, I told the previous group, and you always are hesitant to use sports references, but I use Chip Kelly as a reference. Everybody knows Chip Kelly, the football coach, and probably here in the Pacific Northwest because he was at Oregon as a coach and then in the NFL. But what a lot of people don't know is before that, he was at some really small schools nobody had ever heard of on the East Coast, where he spent 15, 16, 17 years as an assistant honing his craft. And so when I got my doctorate, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to hone my craft. I wanted to learn how to be a leader, and I wanted to learn how community colleges worked, how they really worked. And so I spent a long time doing that. I got a great opportunity to become a division chair. And I think chairs and deans have some of the toughest jobs on campus. There's some of the, because they get it from both sides. They've got administration breathing down on them. They've got faculty looking to them and at them. And so it's tough, but you learn a whole lot. And I was also fortunate in that my wife worked in the business office. So I really got a good picture of what the institution looked like. And so when the time came and we started to look, I found this school in Kentucky and applied, and have been very fortunate to have served as their chief academic officer. And so that's a little bit about my story and how I wanted to become a president. You never know when you're ready. I've talked to my president, who's a good mentor for me, several times, and he's told me in the last year, hey, you're in year 3. I think, you should start thinking about it. I think you're ready. And so I looked and looked and looked, and I knew I didn't want to go anywhere in Kentucky. I'm not bad mouthing them. The system is not my cup of tea. They're great institutions to work for. And I love Ashland Community and Technical College. I absolutely love it. But this campus is more like Meridian. It's more of what I envision as a comprehensive community college with residence halls and lots of student life and the arts and athletics and all those things that go along with that. And so when I saw this opportunity, believe it or not, there's not that many places like this left out there. I really jumped at it. So I sent my information to the Poly group and they called. And so that's how I ended up here. Now, would you give me part 2 of that question real quickly?
Absolutely. What is your understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing the college?
Well, I think the opportunities are immense because I think there's opportunities at every college and every corner you turn to, because a lot of the problems are the same. I do think that one of the things that I see as far as a challenge here is just simply the fact that there needs to be a calming presence here. From what I've read, that is absolutely one of the things that drew me to the institution. When I was hired at ACTC, that was one of the mandates that I had from my president. He said, we need a calming presence. We need somebody that can communicate with faculty. They had been through 3 CAOs in 2 years. They had a really contentious relationship with their last one, and he was a brand new president. He came out of workforce, so he didn't have a faculty background. So he was really looking for somebody who could come in, who could collaborate, who could break down some silos, who could work with people, who could really give people an opportunity to share their voice and listen. And so that's my specialty. I come from a coaching background. That's what I do. You'll hear me refer to this over and over and over again, is that coaching is my philosophy. It's how I believe in developing people. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen as far as a challenge here, is just someone coming in and bringing the campus together. But that's something that I think is very worthwhile work to do. And I'm hoping that I'm the person to do it.
If you came to an impasse with the Board of Trustees on an issue you felt extremely passionate about, how would you proceed?
So now we're talking about a hill to die on. Well, that's a tough one. We talk about those a lot where I am. It depends on what the issue is. That's why they call it a hill to die on. That's really the $64 question for everyone. It depends on how passionate I am about it. It depends on, how important it is. But there are some issues that, yeah, they're worth losing your job over. I'm not immune to those. So you've got to have a certain amount of respect for the board because they are obviously the people who are the employer of the the candidate, the president. So, I don't know how to answer that other than I'm as passionate, can be as ingrained, and I can be probably, for lack of a better word, as stubborn a person as you will meet. So when I dig in, I dig in. So that would be probably the definition of the immovable object meeting the unstoppable force. So they would probably have to pry me out of the position at that point. I'm just being honest.
Okay.
Maybe naivete on my part, but.
All right, next question. Please discuss your experience with navigating the pandemic in a higher education setting and describe how that experience would inform how you might approach higher education in the future.
I'm trying to forget all of that, to be honest with you, because, every candidate that comes in here is going to have navigated an institution through the pandemic. It's absolutely tough. I mean, you talk about, and when I think about it, I just laugh because 2019, the fall of 2019 was my first semester as a CAO. Well, the pandemic started in the spring of 2020. I didn't even make a full year before we went into it. So you talk about trial by fire. The biggest issues for us, some of them were taken out of our hands, I'll be honest. So for example, mask mandates and things like that. We didn't have a choice on that. Those were directives that were issued by the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. He was very adamant about that. And he instructed the education cabinet, and then that filtered down through the Kentucky Council for Post-Secondary Education, through KCTCS. We all had the mask mandate. The biggest issue for us was that first summer. What do we do with the students in the technical programs who didn't get their lab time in? What do we do with the science students who didn't get their lab time in? That was a big issue for us. The move online, yeah, that was tough, but we were ready for that. We weren't totally ready. Nobody was, but we pivoted, I think, pretty quickly because we have a pretty strong online consortium within the groups of 16 that we have through our KCTCS online offerings. Nursing was probably the toughest one. That was the toughest group to get online because they just really, they weren't used to teaching online. Most nursing programs weren't. That was ubiquitous throughout the country. But how do we get those labs in? So what we ended up doing is we got special permission from the governor towards the end of the summer to bring those students in. But then all the rules had to apply, the masks, the social distancing, and that's what was really tough. So our faculty, I think, went above and beyond what anybody should do. The welding faculty, those electrical faculty, the applied process technologies faculty, the industrial maintenance faculty, because they brought those students in small groups and they stayed until those lab hours got in. It took all summer long to finish those students from that spring semester. And I tell our faculty all the time, they're the greatest group of faculty I've ever seen anywhere I've ever worked because of the hours that they put in to make sure that those students got those hours that they needed. Science faculty were the same way. Nursing faculty were the same way, the way that they went above and beyond to do that. That was our biggest challenge. Second biggest challenge is obviously where do we go from there with the pandemic, because it totally disrupted everything in higher ed. I know that you all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Scheduling has been our biggest thing. How do we schedule classes now? What do we do? So we started a thing that fortunately for me, I had started when I first got to the institution before the pandemic. We had a meeting every semester with a cross-sectional group from campus that I called Schedule Summit. And so we look at our schedule, our class schedule, and try to find improvements, try to find ways that we can schedule classes that will aid enrollment, retention, and also benefit the students. We started out that first semester doing some focus groups. And so that kind of gave us the impetus that we knew we were going to have to add more hybrid classes to begin with. So once the pandemic started to subside, we said, okay, so we're going to have to use these. Well, by the time we got through the pandemic, the high flex model had also come onto the scene. And so we're really using the high flex model now a lot too. And actually this fall, we've got our first class. I'm crossing my fingers on this one. We've got a class that an instructor teaches, I think, in developmental psychology. And on our 2 campuses, there's this particular class, and she wasn't able to make enough enrollment to have a full section on either campus. So we're going to use a high flex model. And so it'll be a Tuesday, Thursday class, and she'll teach Tuesday at one campus, Thursday on the other, but the students will be in the same Blackboard shell in the same class. And so we're going to be able to put the class on that way. So we've had to be innovative in our scheduling. Our current focus for this fall is going to be, how do we get an in-person schedule? Because now we've skewed so far online, but we still have students that don't want online classes. And I was looking at comparison percentages with our institutions, and you all, I see, have the same issue we do. You've got that population of students that's all online, but you've also got a population that wants to be on campus. How do we do that? We're small. Our faculty numbers have dwindled over the past couple of years because we had some layoffs before I got to the institution. So we've got fewer faculty, and there's only so many adjuncts you can find. So that's going to be our next challenge, is how do we guarantee students, and I really want to market this, tell these students, hey, tired of online classes? Well, come to ACTC. We can put you in the classroom with an in-person professor that'll take care of those needs. So those are some of the things that we're doing. Just a few. We were able to put cameras in all of the classrooms, so that all of our classes we can go back to hybrid or high flex if we have to, if the pandemic were to come back. I think it's endemic now. Is that the correct term that we use? So the pandemic is over, I think, according to Dr. Fauci, but we'll see.
All right, you mentioned this, so I'm going to ask you to elaborate more on it. How would you tackle the issue of staffing and faculty shortages in today's labor market?
Well, there's a loaded question. We're facing it right now. You can go on our website and see we've got all kinds of openings. That's really the $64 question. This great resignation has finally started to hit higher education. We do have fewer people. I think it depends on whether you're talking about what position you're talking about. I mean, I know talent is talent, but you've got the faculty side, you've got the staff side. Then within the faculty side, you've got your gen ed, you got your career tech, and those are both two different groups to try to target. Our biggest issue in the Commonwealth has been nursing. That's the one where we can't keep positions for, and it's because the average salary for nurses is so high in Kentucky right now versus what we can pay instructors. So KCTCS has caps on what we pay faculty. So we don't have any leeway on that. So we're asking faculty members in nursing to start at a rate of pay that's half of what the average salary for a Kentucky nurse is right now. Well, they laugh at us when they hear what the salary is. So we've done a few things. We've gotten some special permission from KCTCS for a couple of areas. Nursing is one. On hard to fill positions, we've been able to move the salaries just a little bit. We've been able to offer some additional professional development dollars. I've been able to offer some folks some more advanced training with advanced degrees. For example, we've hired some nursing candidates in. We've agreed to pay for their master's degrees and things like that. I think that's the future of talent development and hiring, is we're going to have to show the individual, what kind of perks they're going to get. Now, the one everybody wants is remote work, obviously, but we're a college. Everybody can't work remotely. So I think we're going to have to be creative in how we solve that issue. But I think that those are some of the things we can do.
NIC has multiple locations in the region. How would you ensure faculty and staff feel like one big team despite being miles apart?
Well, we have the same problem or challenge at ACTC. We've got 3 different campuses. We've got our downtown campus that's referred to as our main campus. And it's funny. This campus looks much more like Meridian. It's multiple buildings. So at ACTC, at our main campus, it's one gargantuan building. I mean, it is huge. It's 4 floors, probably takes up 3 city blocks. It's crazy how big it is. Doesn't take up 3 blocks, but it's huge. Then our Tech Drive campus, we actually have our technical programs housed on a separate campus that's built in an industrial parkway. And so it's a really unique setup. Those folks are out there. And then we have our workforce campus. So that's the same challenge we have. We face it with our administrators. We face it with our faculty. We try to have events for faculty where we bring them to different campuses. For example, our professional development days, our in-service days, we'll move those from campus to campus. So we don't always have those at the same place. We move the president's cabinet meeting from place to place. And then as administrators, we try to go to each campus at least one day a week. And we practice a lot of what I call management by wandering. You know, we walk around, we talk to people, we see people. The associate deans who work for me do the same thing. You know, because most of my associate deans have faculty on both campuses. So those are some of the things you can do. It is hard when you're place bound like that. But we try through communication and through this other thing that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Hopefully you'll give me a question that leads to that. Otherwise, I'll just do it, about this system we have called 40X, which has done a lot for us as well.
Okay. NIC has we did that one. Please describe your experience with supporting diversity related programs within your institution. So
I have found that there's two types of people where diversity is concerned. And now it's not just diversity, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's DEI. In Kentucky, we have lots of things that we do to support DEI efforts, but going back in time to the beginning of my career. So coming out of coaching basketball and also working in live theater, I absolutely have a ton of experiences working with underserved populations, underrepresented groups. Coming from Mississippi with also having a very large African-American presence, I also have that as well. But I think the two kinds of people where diversity, equity, inclusion are concerned is you have talkers and you have doers. I mean, I'm just going to be gut level honest here and say that, and I don't mind. I'm unabashed about it. I think that those efforts should be supported. I've always supported any diversity efforts that are out there. I was very proud of where we were at MCC. We had a very diverse group of faculty and staff. We also had a diverse cabinet. The president had African-American vice presidents, and we never had any problems. Everybody got along. Life was good. One of the things that I did is I really tried to incorporate some of those things into the theater. Probably my greatest accomplishment I had, and I was never prouder of this, but I decided to do an all African-American show at the college as part of our Arts and Letters series. And so we did a production of The Color Purple in one of my last years there. It was fantastic. If you've never seen the show, it's just phenomenal. And I was really honored more than anything else when I went to our theater students and I said, you know, we got the show. They were excited. So we planned a trip to take a group of students to go see it in North Carolina. There was a traveling Broadway production of it. And so we went and saw it and we got through, walked out. Students were very excited. Oh, we can't wait to do this. And I said, okay, I guess the only thing left is we got to find a director. And they looked at me and they said, why? And I said, well, who's going to direct this? And they said, you are, Dr. Brand. And I said, me? And they said, yeah, why wouldn't you? And I was just blown away by that. You know, here I thought, you know, I'm going to have to go find somebody, but to a person, they didn't hesitate. They said, we want you to do this. And we put on that show and it was absolutely phenomenal. I just can't tell you, the response from the community was incredible. We had patrons to our theater programs. They'd never been there before, and it opened up a whole new line of dialogue between us and the community. It was fantastic. In Kentucky, we have several committees that deal with this that I'm on. We actually have two positions at ACTC. We have a director of diversity, and now we have a senior fellow for cultural diversity, equity, and inclusion. With academics, we work very closely with them. In Kentucky, for KCTCS, we do a diversity report every year that's done between academics and student services. And we've got metrics that we track that relate to diversity. If we don't meet those metrics, I cannot start any new academic programs. It's that serious in the Commonwealth, and I've never not been able to start a program. So I think we do a pretty good job, have had a lot of training in it. So I think I've got a good amount of experience and track record where DEI is concerned.
Okay. Please share examples of experience you have in resource development, fundraising, and grants, and why you feel your experience can help to advance the mission of North Idaho College.
Well, at ACTC, our president has been he's been a great mentor to me, and he's allowed me to work with him with some donors. The biggest experience I've had that was probably the most fun is we had an optometrist in town, and years ago he had endowed an award for faculty in the sciences because he had gone to ACC back when it was ACC years ago, and he had a math teacher that really inspired him, and so he left this really large gift. It was about $1 million to the college that they used for an award. Well, the humanities faculty and the social sciences faculty were kind of like, you know, we need something too. And so the president and I went to the family And we worked on this my first year, and we got him to commit another $750,000. And so we were able to get an award for those faculty as well. And that's been the highlight of my fundraising experience there, was working with this family on securing that donation. It was just incredible to see the generosity of somebody do that. At my previous position at MCC, I worked with our foundation, heading up teams on our campus to have people from the college, sign up to be donors to the foundation. We worked hand in hand because her division, the foundation, always funded our shows. So did a lot of efforts with them, more of in a group setting rather than an individual one-on-one. But my division would put on a lot of events for them and work hand in hand to raise funds as well. Because we had a program at MCC that was called, it was a free tuition plan, essentially is what it was. And so essentially, if you graduated from a high school in the district, you could go to the college tuition free because of this program. And it was the first of its kind in the state of Mississippi. We raised the money in the business community. And so anybody that graduated, if they kept a C average and they applied for their other financial aid first, so it was a last dollar in kind of thing, you could go tuition free. It was called tuition guarantee. And so I worked for that program for years as well in Mississippi.
Please share your experiences with student involvement and how you champion different student engagement activities and initiatives.
Ooh, there's a big one. That's a lot to unravel. I've always said that students need things to do. So now we're talking extracurricular, co-curricular. They've got to have things to do. It can't just be in the classroom. They can't get everything they need, which is why I get frustrated by the all online thing so much. But we've got to keep our students engaged both inside and outside the classroom. Inside the classroom, what we found the last time that we did a SESI survey is that we weren't scoring really well in active and collaborative learning. So one of the things that we've done, not only for in-class, but also for online, because that's where it's desperately needed as well, is we got a Title III grant. And we've done course redesigns across the campus, one class at a time, one section at a time, one instructor at a time, with that Title III grant, where we have infused active and collaborative learning into the classroom. And this is both for in-person and for online. That's also gone hand in hand with, we've put that in our QEP, that our focus is going to be on active and collaborative learning. Because again, the SESI scores were a little bit low in that category, and we want to make sure that we're fully engaging our students. As far as out of the classroom in Kentucky, we're not doing a lot. I'll be honest. Student life had suffered a good bit because of the way the colleges were set up before the pandemic, and after the pandemic hasn't really returned quite as much. Of course, we're not residential, we're commuter campuses, but even a lot of the things that were there before we left have disappeared. So I meet with our Chief Student Services Officer frequently, and we're trying to figure out what are things we can do on campus to get students involved. Now we've got a couple of clubs, we've got things like Phi Theta Kappa, obviously, that keep a certain percentage of the students involved, but we need things for everybody. I'm doing a renovation of their theater right now as we speak. I did one in Mississippi because they haven't had a school play in 3 years because their house was so out of repair that they weren't able to do one. And so the faculty have been really waiting on that. We had to get the money for it. So we finally were able to use some HERF funds to do part of it. And so I just got through redoing the line sets. I'm fixing to replace the drapes, and the audio's coming in this summer. And then we're going to start working on lighting. But you've got to have things, again, for students to do when you're looking at extracurricular and co-curricular.
All right, that wraps up our questions, but I'd like to give you some time, our remaining time, to provide any closing remarks that you'd like.
Well, I would just say that, when I came into the institution, I kind of had a multiple mandate. One of those was to calm everybody down. And then they wanted me to help with strategic planning. We really wanted to see what we could do to move the needle forward. And so one of the things that really helped with morale, we did a couple of things. One, we instituted a new committee on campus called the Culture Committee. And their sole focus was to improve the culture on the campus, to improve relationships, to get people involved, to bring that family type vibe back to the institution that they said was sorely lacking. Another thing we did, though, is we looked at a program. We needed a common language that we could speak. We needed an operating system, for lack of a better word. So Dr. Ferguson and I both had a love for this system that Covey produces called 4DX. It stands for the 4 disciplines of execution. It's perfectly set up for me as a coach because As a coach, one of the things we understand is the implementation of strategy, because that's what makes or breaks your organization. It's not, can you plan something? It's, can you go through with it? Now, everybody in this room can probably think of something in their career where it was an initiative or something new you were going to do, and everybody was fired up about it, right? So you leave the room and you're like, yeah, this is going to be great. And 6 months later, you look over at somebody and go, yeah, remember that thing we talked about 6 months ago? We still doing that? Right? So this kind of focuses on that. And so we looked at how can we move the needle forward, because our thought was, if we can get a focus and we can get the whole campus focused on something together, it's that whole idea of something bigger than yourself, then maybe we can start to heal and we can start to do some of these things. So 40X is focused around the idea of, it takes all we have to get through a day. Would you agree with that? I mean, are there days that you just fight to keep your head above water at work and you can't add one more thing because you got to do all the things you've got to do that are part of your job? So 40X takes the approach of, okay, we understand that. And they call that the whirlwind. Your day-to-day activities is the whirlwind. And so it says, though, in order for you to move forward, you got to step back out of the whirlwind and say, okay, I'm going to dedicate X amount of time in my week to something else. No matter what the cost, I've got to do it. And so there's the accountability factor is high. And so you create for your organization what's called a WIG, a wildly important goal. We created two. We had one that was based on transfer. We wanted to raise our transfer rate. It's an ambitious goal, right? And then we had one that was based on retention. We had some sub-WIGs, graduation rate. Okay, that relates to those other two things. Student score on the SESI, we looked at that. Enrollment, we looked at that. And we said, okay, so then we divided the school into 30 teams. Each of these teams had their own WIG they had to come up with. Some improvement they wanted to make in their area. Could be anything, as long as whatever it is will help move these other two goals, okay? And so these teams met every week. You actually create a scoreboard to keep the score, so it makes your work play. Meeting weekly keeps you accountable. You have to come up with something that you do every week to move this needle forward. And then we held our breath, because those goals that I told you we came up with for the institution, we put a 2-year clock on. So we've now gotten the results of those. And to say I'm blown away is an understatement. I mean, my boss and I were looking at it, and he was telling the rest of the cabinet, and we were telling the board, and the board was just blown away. And they said, how in the world did you do that? And we said, 40X. I mean, that's all we can say. And so to give you some of those metrics, our graduation rate for our 2019 cohort is at 43%. 43% graduation rate. Our retention fall to fall 62%. We had the highest increase last year of any school in the state of Kentucky in the number of credentials awarded. And on our last SESI, we had a target. Well, we called it the top box metric. So we looked at students answering in the most positive way you can on each question. We hit 40% on that, and our target was only 36. So every metric we set, we excelled at. And then on the macro level, the things that the individual teams were doing was just incredible. We had teachers who, let's say, I know one that I can think of was the biology and chemistry teachers. They had a team. They increased their in-class retention rate to 95% on their science classes. It was just amazing, the things that we're hearing, and they're telling us this stuff. And so I've got all these teams that report to me, and so we meet once a week, and we have our session, and then they have their sessions, and then I meet with the president, and we have our session. And it sounds like a lot of meetings, but it's really not. Meetings only last 15 minutes. 15-minute meeting is all it takes, but it takes the discipline. It takes you have to stick to it. You can't miss a meeting, and you have to say, I'm going to do this no matter what. That was the hardest thing for us, was selling people on the fact that no matter what's going on in your day, you still got to make your meeting. We call it a WIG session. You got to make your WIG session no matter what it is or where you are, because we can do them on Teams. And so that's been a really big thing for us, because it's been a rallying point for everybody to rally around. And so now once a semester, we have a celebration with all the faculty, and we highlight the teams that have success with their WIGs. And you can actually get different certificates for different levels of achievement. You can have a bronze, you can have a silver, you can have a gold, and we give prizes, and we do all these fun things. And those things are bringing back that family atmosphere that we were talking about. And that's what was kind of missing from ACTC. and I think it's back. I told the first group, as you're thinking about, the candidates, you're going to see 5 people who have a lot of similarities, right? I mean, you are. We've all been in these positions, and we have this training, and we can do these things. But just ask yourself a couple of questions. And one thing that I would ask is which of the candidates do you think can get the most out of the people at the college? And I'm hoping I'm that person, because coaching is absolutely what I do. I use Nick Saban as the example. I'm a Mississippi State graduate. I do not like Alabama football, but I respect Nick Saban for what he does. And I heard Gary Danielson say during an Alabama football game one day, he said, people misunderstand Saban. They think, oh, he's a great coach. The players must think he's a great coach. And Danielson said, Nick Saban doesn't coach football players. Nick Saban coaches the coaches. To me, that's what I do now as chief academic officer. I coach all the people that report to me. I coach the associate deans. I coach the director of career services. I coach the director of libraries. I coach the e-learning director. That's what I do. I'm their coach. My boss, the president, coaches me. He coaches the cabinet. The deans coach their individual faculty members. So that's how I believe you get the best out of people. I challenged our faculty the first day I came to ACTC. I said, I want to give you one challenge, and that's be a mentor, find a mentor. I said, I want everybody on this campus to do that. I said, mentor somebody and find a mentor. My mentor I found on our campus is Dr. Ferguson, our president, and he's agreed to serve in that capacity. He didn't have to do that, but I asked him, I said, I really need mentoring. I want to be a president. My other mentor in town is Tim Gibbs, who's president of the Ashland Alliance, which is our Chamber of Commerce, and he's really mentored me. I chose a person who was in a faculty position to mentor because she came to me and asked me. She said, I really need mentorship. I said, no problem. And 3 years later, she's just been named Associate Dean for Health Sciences. And I am so proud of the progress that she has made, going from nursing instructor to Associate Dean of Health Sciences. And, it's just been so much fun to watch her grow through professional development. We have conversations, I've had her read some books. We've sent her to some meetings to prepare her for this, but I feel very strongly, very passionate about it. And everybody can do this in the institution. You can be a mentor, you can find a mentor. And I also think that makes those relationships on the campus grow stronger. I would look at which candidates you think would be the best in a crisis. Now, it's funny you mentioned the pandemic. So you're going to have 5 candidates and everybody can say, I've led through a pandemic. That was a crisis, right? Of course it was. It's the biggest crisis we've ever had in higher education. We also went through Hurricane Katrina at Meridian Community College. I was there. Yep, that was fun. Blew the roof right off my house. We watched it rain inside the living room when it was going on. Terrifying. But then the aftermath is, what do you do now? Well, we've got a town that's torn up. We've got a college that we've got to reopen. People have got to be paid. I can remember my wife called me. She worked for the business office. And she said, I need your help. I said, okay. She said, I got to go pay people. I said, what? I got to go pay people. I said, how are you going to pay people? Are the lights even on? She said, yeah, banks reopened. I said, so you're going to hand people a check? No, we're going to give them cash. I said, what? You're going to do what? Yeah, president wants me to give them cash so everybody has money. I said, is that safe? She said, well, that's where you come in. Okay. So I remember me and the chief of police for the campus sitting there next to her, armed to the teeth, me on her right, him on her left, and her with, over $1 million in a bag. And she's checking off names and handing people money. And then we had to get the campus going again because it ravaged the campus. That's tough. That's tough. We went through that. I can remember being at Brandon High School in 1999. This will ring a bell for you because I know that Columbine is close, right? You ever heard of Pearl High School? So Pearl High School in 1999 was one of the first schools right after Columbine to have a school shooting. And I can remember being at Brandon. Brandon was 6 miles down the road from Pearl when Luke Woodham went on a shooting rampage. I'm a brand new instructor. I'm 24 years old. What do I know? But I remember him calling us from the county office, all hands on deck. And I can remember the aftermath of that, how ugly it was, and all the students that hurt. Crisis happens. It just does. And sometimes it's gut-wrenching and it's hard. Economic crisis has hit us at ACTC. Right before the pandemic, just a couple of weeks, our second largest healthcare provider, hospital, shuts its doors, gone. Our Lady of Bellefonte Hospital. Following that, AK Steel, the last steel mill in Kentucky, closes. All those people out of jobs. What are we going to do? Boom, then a pandemic hits. Boy, you talk about something that exacerbates things. On top of that, we had a company called Brady Industries that was supposed to locate in Ashland. They were going to build on our campus. They were going to build a $1.2 billion rolling steel mill. We put in an academic program for that. I had 100 students sitting in that program. And then the CEO gets kicked out by his board, takes the money with him and runs. That plant's not built. We've got 100 students looking for jobs. Crisis. So we've been in crisis mode for a while at ACTC. We've had to close that program, by the way. We weren't able to rebrand it. We tried and tried. It's a viable program. It's called AIT, Advanced Integrated Technology. It creates some of the finest operators for a plant you'll find, but people tied it so much in the public to that entity, they couldn't do it. So we're having to merge that now with industrial technology, and we're going to have to rebrand industrial technology. That's going to be one of our next challenges. So I say all that to say this: you always look to leadership when you're in a crisis. So ask yourself, which person do you want to be the face of the college when the crisis hits? Who do you want people looking to? If it's not me, hey, that's fine. But I do want you to ask yourself that question. Then the third question is, who can tell the story of North Idaho the best? And I'm going to tell you the same story I told the first group, and I can do it fairly quickly. But when I was growing up, when I was born in the 70s, I was a product of what they would call a broken home, whatever that means. My parents were divorced, had a single mother. And so we moved back in with my grandparents. And there weren't many prospects for a woman in the 70s who had a small child and no college education. You know, prospects were dim. So we moved back in with the grandparents. And she was trying to figure out what to do. She's a really smart lady. Mom could have gone to medical school. She had a really high ACT score, graduated pretty high in her class, but got a kid. It's hard to go to medical school when you got a small child. So she enrolled in a program at a local hospital. And it was one where they articulated credit through a local community college, Hines Community College. She got to go to x-ray school for free. And so she became an x-ray tech. She made the second highest score on the registry exam that year. I remember Grandma talking about it and how proud she was. But the point is, if it hadn't been for that program, I don't know where I would be today. It absolutely saved my life, my mom's life. And so when you think about that, when I think about that, I get chills today, because that's what community colleges do, is it not? We change people's lives. When you see them walk across that stage or that floor at graduation and they get that credential, that's all that goes through my mind is, we just changed a life right there. We've got a student right now at ACTC that just went through one of our short-term training programs, our EKG program. He came back and saw us and said, you know, I was delivering pizzas for a living, not even being able to have my own place, living with my parents. He went through a 6-week training program in EKG, got a job in telemetry at a hospital in Cincinnati. He said, I've got a vehicle, I've got an apartment, and I got all this from that college. You know, I can't think of a better business to be in than this business. That's why I do it. Presidents have to tell the story. They have to talk to leaders at the Capitol. They have to talk to people, to donors who they're looking to solicit money from, so that we can keep these programs going, so that we can expand, so that we can grow. Ask yourself, who tells the story best? Who do you think can do the best job of telling that story? Ask yourself those 3 questions. Hey, and if it's somebody else, it's somebody else. But I would hope that you would consider me as supporting me as your next president. I know it's not an election, but your support does matter. I do appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to talk to all of you. It has been my honor to come into your institution, because it is your institution, and speak to you for a few minutes. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Brand. Thank you for those remarks. And just a reminder to our audience that there is an online feedback form, and you're all invited to go into that form online and complete it. The feedback will go to our Board of Trustees, so it will be considered and is important that we can provide that to them. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. It's important to be invested in the presidential search process, and I appreciate seeing you here. Thank you.